All right, Vice Chair Earl has offered to take the lead on this afternoon's committee reports. So I'm going to pass the gavel.
All right.
And
the
we do have, again, a hard stop in just over 2.5 hours. So I think we need to implement a little bit tighter on Robert's rules. Vice Chair Earl can run the show here, but let's try to keep our comments germane to the immediate subject. Two comments per member, perhaps one if we need to, but I'll leave it to Vice Chair Earl.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and go to Finance Committee report, and Chair, oh, there she is. Are you ready? Okay, we'll turn it over to Chair Norton.
Okay. Rule R277927, Teacher and Student Success Act, Program Amendment. The committee moves that the board approve R277927, Teacher and Student Success Act, Draft 1, on second and final reading.
Okay, the motion before the board is that the committee moves that the board approve R277-927, Teacher and Student Success Act Program, Draft 1, on second and final reading. And we will go ahead, can we just vote? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Board Member Klein?
I just had a question. Are we just moving the November 1st deadline because LEAs are not meeting it? Is it because they're already not meeting it that we're
Yes.
changing it?
Yes. So
My
they'll get
understanding-
their money when they
Yeah.
send it in.
Yeah, that's my understanding, is that when they actually submit, they will get the money for it. So if they don't submit, they actually don't get their TSSA money, or there isn't any available for them. So, yeah. Okay. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that was unanimous. All right.
Okay.
Yep.
Go ahead. The next item is the Medicaid billing system item. The committee moves that the board approve USBE staff to work and coordinate with the Utah Department of Health to develop, test, and implement a Medicaid billing system for use by districts and/or charter schools, and that once the system is fully operational, USBE staff transition the system to oversight and control by USBE staff.
I have a question.
Yes. Board Member Klein, are you still on for this one, or is this a different
I
one?
just have a question on this.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't know if staff can tell us, what exactly does Medicaid fund or reimburse schools for?
Go ahead, whoever wants to go first.
So Deputy Superintendent of Operations Scott Jones and?
Assistant Superintendent Leah Voorhees.
So I think Dr. Voorhees can answer the specific question on what does it fund.
So there's actually a manual, Medicaid provider manual, that outlines exactly what can be billed for. You can find it really easy, the School-Based Skills Development Manual. So there are 7 categories of services that can be billed for. So the first one is evaluation and assessment for identifying health-related service needs. Motor skills development, so like occupational therapy, physical therapy. Communication skills development, like speech-language therapy. Nursing services and personal care services, so anything related to seizures, repositioning, tube feeding, catheterization, those kind of things. Personal care services, which are related to daily living skills, toileting, oral motor skills, eating, bathing, those kind of things. Behavioral health services, aggression, self-abuse, property destruction, behavior significantly impacting a student's ability to benefit from special education is the term in that one. Vision and hearing adaptation services, and itinerant nursing services. And so anything that has to be delegated to a nurse, those can be billed for. So those are the 7 things that are in our Medicaid state plan.
Okay, follow up really quick. So many other states are already implementing school-based health centers, which include the mental health services as well as medical with actual doctors' offices and psychologists, et cetera. We're moving more and more into that realm of psycho and social behavioral health systems and supports, interventions. Where is the line as to what students can receive these services? Because everything I'm reading is moving towards it becoming a universalized system that all students have access to these things.
Board Member Klein?
So that's my question.
This isn't relevant to the motion. Maybe we can get an
Well,
answer real quick, but it's not relevant because this is about a system
Right,
to
so the system is moving
billing system.
towards, but the system will make it easier to install this because I know USB is following the WISC, CDC's WISC model. It's in our documents, the whole school, whole community, whole child, which leads towards the school-based the school-based health centers. So I'm wondering if this is a step in that direction.
Go ahead, if you have it.
Vice Chair, so this billing system doesn't have anything to do with the Medicaid state plan.
Okay.
It's just an online system that LEAs can then send their claims to Medicaid.
Thank you.
May I provide
go
a
ahead.
business perspective? What the Medicaid billing system is also designed to do is both, it's cost avoidance as well. It's a more efficient means or process of the billing so that we avoid, as an example, USDB had to pay back or reimburse Medicaid over $200,000 because of erroneous billing coding. So what we're trying to do is two things, is we're trying to just provide a system strictly for billing. It's not a survey tool, it's not an assessment tool, it's not a thing, it is a billing system. It is something that would conceivably provide LEAs who have forgone using contracted services for Medicaid billing because of the costs of that, to do that so that they can bring revenue in for the services that are provided for the students. Did I get that right? So this is just purely financial. It's purely billing for that. It's not intended to add any other capabilities or things along the lines of what's been described. So I would say no to the question and I think it's a good question. It's a fair question, but from a business perspective, it's for cost avoidance. There was a district that, in addition to the example I gave you for your USDB, there was a district that paid over $1 million back for erroneous Medicaid. And if they had a system like this, they probably would have avoided having to pay that back with state unrestricted money.
Thank you. Vice Chair Hart?
Yes, after we have this system, if we were to have this system in place, would individual LEAs still maintain a sense of autonomy about utilizing this system, or would it be a standard set of procedures that I don't know if that makes any sort of sense. Are districts obligated, they would want to use something like this, obviously, but would it allow them some autonomy, or would all of their Medicaid billing have to go through concentrated channels? Does that?
So, Chair, I'll take a shot at that. This is an opt-in system, right?
Okay.
We wouldn't force them to utilize the system.
Okay.
But we would anticipate, just much along the lines of, giving them options on which student information system to choose, or doing things like that.
Okay.
They can still choose to use vendor-supported services.
Okay.
Right? So.
And then my last question is, I see that, I kind of read between the lines, and what I'm seeing is that the Utah Department of Health kind of is maybe leading out maybe a little bit on this. Do you think that they would be utilizing services of perhaps a vendor or are they reinventing the wheel, or are they utilizing structures that other states have found success with? Or are they coming up with it all on their own?
I think the answer to that is both. I think that they're very tuned in to other states as far as what systems they use. So would probably incorporate that into it. Much like we have the situation with USIMS, they have that ARP ESSER money to utilize, and that's how they're funding this. So it would be a mutually coordinated effort with, that aspect of it, that subject to it meeting the requirements that we need for the business processes of it, that we would take that over. But they're funding the development
They're
and
funding
program.
this.
Ye-
And that
yes,
was
yes, ma'am.
that was my last question. Are there ongoing costs that we would be obligated, or we would have to decide about contributing in the future? Or is this, once it's developed, other than obviously routine maintenance kind of updates and such, would it require a decision about an outlay of cash on behalf of the USBE?
So as we progress with Department of Health, and as we get closer to it, subject to the board's decisions here today, we would make sure that the transition would be very public-facing in the sense of what we're only anticipating is very small maintenance or sustainment costs. Updates, things like that. I mean, a lot is going to depend on the programming language, what software is utilized, things like that. We would track that and make you aware of any concerns or considerations of, cost creep or things like that. But for now, we're just anticipating a maintenance type sustainment cost, which is bearable.
And
within our
I'm
budget.
very excited about this. I know a district in which I am affiliated with receives millions of dollars, and those dollars directly serve students, and I'm excited about anything that makes their lives easier. So thank you.
Okay, Board Member Wood.
I appreciate that this would be opt-in. I reached out to my districts, and one of them is using a vendor right now, and their whole opinion is, if this will save us money, we would love a system like that. They put in over 15,000 claims in just a 6-month period for their kids, and so appreciate that they will have that option, and if it can save them money, great. If it can't, they can maintain what they're already doing, so thank you.
Can I ask a question related to this too? So the staff that are currently doing the billing portion of this, is it special education services staff, or is it financial staff that would be, in other words, the time saved or the energy saved, would it be the special education staff, or would it be the financial services?
So just to clarify, Chair, is your question about at the LEA level? Like
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of both, right? I mean, in order for the processing to take place by the financial staff utilizing a vendor, they rely heavily on the programmatic staff to essentially code the services that are input into or provided to the vendor for the billing purposes. So it's both.
So I guess what I'm
process-wise.
understanding is that in streamlining this and creating a less complicated system, we actually would have more services provided via the special education and individuals to the students themselves versus spending a lot of time on the Medicaid portion. Would that be accurate?
That would be accurate. We are looking at this system as being able to save time, to avoid the time it takes for programmatic staff, special education programmatic staff, the time they spend on getting to what right is to provide to the vendor through the financial operations staff, if you will, do it. So yes, time savings as well.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Davis?
I just want to make a quick note that as we mentioned, that there have been mistakes that had to be paid back up to the hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's that doesn't reflect poorly on any of the people, like one we heard from today, because he's so good. But the deal is, this Medicaid billing is a behemoth. It is like, even 20 years ago, I worked in an office where we had a full-time person for our district just trying to stay on top of it, and it's we have to be easy on our judgments because it's really massive, and this is not a new initiative. This is something we've been doing for decades to help kids in special ed.
Thank you. The motion before the board is that the State Board of Education Finance Committee recommends that the State Board of Education approve Utah State Board of Education staff to work and coordinate with the Utah Department of Health to develop, test, and implement a Medicaid billing system for use by district and/or charter schools, and that once the system is fully operational, that the Utah State Board of Education staff transition the system to oversight and control by Utah State Board of Education staff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Raise your, go. Board Member Klein. Okay, thank you. Board Member Klein was the only in opposition to that. And we will move on to the next one.
Okay, item 12, the Utah Data Research Center agenda priorities. The committee moves that the board approve the Utah Data Research Center research agenda priorities. Would you like me to read those out, or are we good?
I don't think so,
Okay.
but I do have an amendment. I would like to strike the last two. Are those listed here? Is it possible to pull those up? And maybe Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones, would you mind just addressing, these priorities came up through the committee that meets, and then they're approved by us, and so therefore, if we wanted other ones, we could maybe make those recommendations and ask that those be taken back. Is that a fair question or not?
Yes, ma'am. So would you please recognize Director Bruff from Data and Statistics? I think he's better suited to answer that question.
Perfect, thank you.
Aaron Bruff, Director of Data and Statistics, thank you. The research priority questions obviously come from a combination of discussion of when we look at, beyond the K-12 system, what impacts do we want to look at and focus on and request that the Utah Data Research Center look at as their priorities, because they look at all the agencies and put those together. So that's where they come from. So again, it's a combination of discussion with staff, with leadership, with the board, and that's why it's being presented here today, saying of the items that we want to look at, what is the most important that we want to communicate forward with UDRC for them to consider within their capacity and their scope that they can do for this next year.
Okay, so I would like to make an amendment to the motion, and I would like us to add these items at least to be considered or taken back to the group. I'm not sure how that works, because
If I may, the request is to receive this information this month. So you would, instead of going back, we would say, okay, we'd wait a year before we could get that back to them. This happened last year as well, where we had items, we presented it, it was not approved. We didn't submit anything to the UDRC for their research agenda for last year. So just letting you know the time frame that we're looking at is they've requested that information to be submitted this month.
may I ask a clarifying question? How is that information, where do they get that information from in the first place?
Which information?
Well, the priorities. Did we vote on those, or we only vote on them when they come back to us? Does that make sense? We're voting on priorities, but did we move those priorities forward, is what I'm asking. I
That's what we're asking for today. Vote on these are the priorities the board would like to look at for them to consider to put within their scope.
So therefore, making a recommendation on priorities would be in order.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I'd like to move then, so.
Thank you.
I'd like to move these 4 priorities in addition to the others, and I can read those. Which would be,
I don't think she wants to strike.
yes, it would be remove the last 2 items on there. I don't know if that's, sorry, I didn't, the last 2 items on the, do you have it on there? I could read those out if I need to pull them up.
Angie is.
Okay, Angie does have them. Why am I not? Yeah, okay, sorry, yes. I'll just read it off there then. To strike the last 2 research priorities and add and request the UDRC and the following topics to the UDRC's research agenda priorities. Professional learning practices that lead to academic excellence. 2, risk management, planning, and efficacy of operations impacted by effective internal controls within public schools. 3, promising education flexibility and choice options leading to educator and parent satisfaction. And 4, safety prevention through security measures, school discipline, and threat assessment. I need a second. Maybe I better turn this over to someone else for right now. Oh, I don't know. So, and you want to, I'm going to speak to it, but maybe you better run this for just a minute. I just think these are some priorities that have been internal audit kind of things going on. The flexibility in schools, professional learning, and safety. These are things that have been priority over this last year. I think these are, I just would be interested in seeing research around these items specifically, so.
I guess I'm back running the light board here. Member Norton, then Hymus, Davis, and Lear.
My concern with that would be that those are all definitely items that need research. I just don't know that this is the place to take that research. You know, I know that we are doing some of that in-house, we are collaborating with higher ed, but I don't know that this Utah research group is the group to take on, you know, these highly focused educational issues. It is my understanding that they take us as a part of a whole picture, whereas those issues that Board Member Earl just brought up, which are important, are more, you know, centered strictly on our entity.
Okay, Member Hymus.
Yeah, a couple of questions. First question, can I direct to staff?
Yes.
Is that okay? You mentioned that it would go for another year. What about just removing the items? Could they still start on the ones that they already want to start on?
Could we keep 1, 2, 3?
Yes, absolutely. Could they start on, absolutely, could they?
So removing wouldn't be an extra year, but
No.
But adding, you're saying, would be.
No, we can, so let me clarify.
Please.
We can add as well. I mean, that's not the issue, that's not a problem at all. If
Okay.
you want to add more items, absolutely, can we forward that on to the UDRC group? That's not an issue at all.
Okay.
The issue is, when I say it's an issue, or we can give them nothing. We can do that as well. That's another option.
Right.
We just, if we give them nothing, then they don't focus on anything that we say we would like you to prioritize along with the other work.
Thank you. And can I ask the maker of the motion,
Sure.
can you speak to the 2 items being removed?
Yeah, just a second.
They're not up there. I have looked at them. I have 2 screens.
Yes,
and
I'll
I'll pull up either.
I'll pull it up.
This is social, emotional, and PCBL.
Yep.
Mental and social well-being through academic learning program and impact of personalized competency-based learning.
Yes, and I don't know why it's capitalized, so I don't know if it's a specific program, but it's the academic learning. Some of these are broad, and I'm not sure exactly what they entail. And I just think currently these are, I would like issues that we are seeing, the internal controls of districts and the efficacy there. And then the professional learning, which can have a great impact, what kind of professional learning we have going on in our schools. So I'm just seeing these as the safety issues. These are things that not only through the legislature, but through audits and other things we're seeing come up to the, you know, that we're seeing, as I would consider priorities.
Thank you. I speak in favor of this motion. I think that these are points that are would offer much-needed information and offer even direction for the USBE board and staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Hymus. Member Davis, and then Member Lear.
Thank you. I'd like to divide the question between all 5. First, the 2 to remove, and then each of the 4 separately. I'd like to speak to the motion. If you get a second.
Is there a second to the motion to divide?
I'll second it.
Seconded. Back to you, Member Davis.
Thank you. I think we need to first look at, do we want to take the first two off? Can we leave the first two on and can we add the other four, or which ones would be appropriate to add?
Clarification, didn't you strike the last two, not the first two? So
On the
sorry,
original, on the original.
Yeah.
It's not on here.
Just strike the last two of the original list and then add 4 new ones.
The bullet point
Right.
list on your,
Yeah, I see it here, I just, you said something about the first two.
Can we keep the last two and add the next four, or those that the board wants to add individually? I think, you know, we've got people who've been already kind of working on this. We've had ULEAD and some others, and Data and Research, and some others who've contributed into these. I think it is a really good question about the, is this a program, the capitalized part, that's one question I'd like to see answered, but then I'd like to, I think honestly, we need some research on personalized competency learning, quite frankly, because that's a big, it's a lot of what we're doing up here, and we need to know the pros and cons of that. So, can someone answer the question about the program, the American Learning or Academic Learning?
Anybody have an
Is
answer
there a
to that
reason
one?
that's
It's
capitalized? Is it a specific program, or is it just academic learning lowercase?
It's just academic learning, lowercase.
Okay, so how mental and social well-being is influenced through academic learning? Okay, that clarifies a ton. Thank you. I would
Okay.
vote in favor of, on the first vote, leaving the first two in.
All right, let's see where we are on the motion to divide. Is there any discussion to that motion? Member Norton, is that light for later, or is that?
No, oh, it's just for being the finance chair to read the next. one,
Gotcha,
so.
okay. We'll get back then. So, motion is to divide, and that division would be question on the last two items from the original list,
Carol.
and then,
I don't, I just want to stay in the queue. I'm not.
okay.
Okay.
And I apologize, sometimes your lights disappear behind good
That's-
52-ounce mugs, so it's,
I think that-
I apologize if I overlook you.
I
I'm
think it's Freudian.
I'm not calling you out. No, I'm just, it's not, I don't want to put the cups, I remembered our former colleague Joel Wright, for some reason, I remember always having a good-sized drink. It's critical. It just, sometimes I can't see, so I'm not trying to overlook you. Okay, let's go to the vote then. Motion divides that the board votes separately on the motion to strike the two final agenda priorities and to consider each of the 4 agenda priorities separately. Start with Member Wood. Yes. Member Straight. No. Member Reel.
No.
Member Norton.
Yes.
Member Lear.
No,
Member Carey. Member Carey. Oh.
It's not a strike,
but it's just to divide. This is to,
Well, so yeah, Member Earl's motion was to strike those two, and, okay.
and we're voting to divide.
We're voting to divide, which would mean then that we would vote separately on first, the last 2 items of the original list being stricken, and then second, each in order of the 4 additionals proposed. Okay, so motion. All right, let's see, where did we get here? We'll start over. With that clarification, we'll start over. Fair enough. All right, back to Member Wood on the motion to divide. Member Straight. Member Straight, sorry, we're starting over. I know you voted already, but. No. No on the motion to divide. Okay. Member Reel. Yes. Member Norton. Yes. Member Lear.
No,
Member Carey. Member Hymus. Vice Chair Hart.
No.
Member Green. Vice Chair Earl. Member Davis.
Yes.
Member Klein.
Yes.
Member Booth.
Yes.
Member Bogus.
No.
And Member Moss is a yes. Passes, right? Okay. So that motion passes. The question has been divided. what we have then for consideration is first, the motion to strike the last two of the original priorities, if we could pull that initial list back up somehow.
Just point of clarification.
Yes.
Because ours are bulleted and hers are numbered, can we make sure we know which ones that the motion maker wants to strike?
We lost our motion maker, but I'm pretty sure it's mental and social
The
and
last two
PCBL.
bullets. All right,
Correct.
helpful, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so we have on the floor then the motion that the board strikes the last two research priorities from the UDRC's research agenda priorities. Let's see, and that was, I think we need a new second once we've divided,
I'll second.
correct? That's been seconded.
Second that we want to.
Motion to strike the last
Oh,
two
strike, no.
original UDRC
And, oh.
research. All right, we do have a second. Do we not need another second once it's divided? Okay, never mind, there we go, I'm learning on the fly here. I have one question procedurally before we vote on these two. To what extent does this vote influence what UDRC does? This is not direction to them. Their funding is separate from us, correct? They are funded separately.
Correct.
And so this is essentially a recommendation of our priorities for their consideration, which
That is
ultimately
correct.
they decide what to do with, correct? Am
That
I
is
just
correct.
procedural layout? Okay,
Correct.
So it's
all
good
right.
that we divided it,
Thank
right?
you.
we
So,
can-
any further discussion then?
I do.
Vice Chair Earl, let me see, I'm going out of order here.
Okay,
Let's get back to the, I've got Member Earl, who is the maker. I've got Lear, Bogus, and Davis. Pass? Member Lear?
I just briefly would like to say, I appreciate Board Member Earl, or Vice Chair Earl's interest in this and concern. I just think this is a committee that has studied these things, their world is data, they understand, the committee understands education. Who are we, I've not seen any data from Member Earl or to see that these are the things that should be studied. So I think to not take seriously what this very well appointed and educated committee has decided should be priorities would just be a huge step of arrogance on our part.
Vice Chair Earl, you passed.
Yeah, and
Would you like to address?
I will address that. Yeah, I don't think that's the case. I think we are prime to know and to make recommendations. I mean, we are one of the entities that sits on this. It's not, the reason why it comes before us and we vote on it is for that very reason. And I think this is something we can ask to do the research on. I think it's an obligation for us to be involved in this. So I don't think it's beyond our reach to suggest or make recommendations.
Okay, Member Bogus.
I just want to be clear, maybe this is a point of clarification to the gentleman here. Does the data sharing agreement come back to us, or is it just kind of assumed that they get whatever they want if we send these forward?
So to answer the question, the data sharing agreement or the interagency agreement is not coming back to us. It's already in place, and it is state law that we share our information with the Utah Data Research Center, along with the other entities who are data providers behind that.
Okay, thank you.
Member Davis, then Member Reel and Green.
Yeah, there's a couple in the new list that I really like, actually, and I'd like to add to it. And then, the group is going to do it, the group's going to do. But, I was just thinking this morning as I was watching those dancers and thinking about the Beverly Taylor Sorensen when we had agreed to increase the funding there. A lot of our discussion was that this is a way to improve emotional well-being for kids. And the arts really are lifting. And it was something that all of us could agree on in this age where there's kind of a variety of feelings about some of this area. And I was thinking, what if we learned some things about our academic programs and academic success that bolsters and improves rather than other programs that are specific targets to those mental and social well-being issues? could it be possible? And so I would be interested in knowing if there are other areas like the arts grants that we could coalesce around instead of being divided in that area. And then, as far as personalized competency-based learning, the legislature's put in, quite frankly, millions of dollars in grants that we've been involved in from the past 7 years now. And we've had exploratory grants from our LEAs, and we've had implementation grants. And it would be great if this group, and we don't have to pay for it necessarily, would do some research for us. If we're headed in the wrong direction, for heaven's sakes, let's figure it out and make a course correction. If it's working, let's figure out next steps. But goodness, would be helpful.
Member Davis, Member Reel.
Yeah, I live in data. I love data-driven decision-making. We all have personal lived experiences or anecdotes that we base our decisions on, or the success or failure of something based on our own personal interests. But the best decision-making, the most responsible thing we can do is make decisions through data and understanding. If we, I have a lot of questions about competency-based learning. We talk about that a lot in higher education. Member Davis and I were just talking about that. I would love to understand the impacts of competency-based learning. But the only way we'll know if we think that these things are good or bad or a great strategy for our students is through the data. And so I personally would hate to see either of these go. Whether we add some or not is, I think, up for discussion, but I would personally hate to see those go because I believe we need more research in these areas to really truly understand and make strategic, data-driven decisions for our whole system.
Thank you, Member Reel. Member Green, then Member Vice Chair Hart.
Yeah, I'm in support of the recommendations from Member Earl. I really feel like those resonate with the things that I hear just in my district, over the last year. With just seeing these for the first time, it resonates with the organic conversations that I had with not only parents, but teachers and principals. And so I think it's almost like an area that's been neglected for a little while. I was excited to learn that we could even be researching these areas in areas that maybe we've become kind of comfortable with because they've kind of fortified the structure that we exist in right now as a system, but to go back and address those in the new light that some of these areas exist, specifically number 4 for my county. I know that is a very big topic of conversation, and in a couple other of my counties as well. So for me, I just feel like it would be more boots on the ground topics that it's been a minute since we've done a deep dive. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Member Green. Vice Chair Hart.
I see us as a client in some ways, of this organization or group. And so I don't think they necessarily exist to serve themselves. They exist to answer questions about things facing Utahns. So I think it's very appropriate, and hence why we're weighing in on this in this meeting. And I think it's appropriate for a Board of Education who is supposed to be setting direction and policy to responsibly seek out various sources of information in order to make good decisions. I think there's another way to get information, and that's audit. And while audit has its purposes, research is, I think, a very valuable way to get information before having to do an audit. And so I think that what I'm hearing is a lot of people that would really appreciate more information as we make decisions. This poor organization, I think, might be inundated with our requests. We might have opened a Pandora's box on that, because there are so many things we need to know specific to Utah. I do think that we need to look at our strategy overall on how we gather data. I think we've got a number of ways. Like I said, there's audit, but there's also ULEAD, and there's also work that various universities are doing, various groups, and this being another group. We certainly share our data, so we certainly, I think, is within our purview to ask if they would consider some of the things that we're looking at. I also think that this is a very proactive move in getting ready for the next legislative session, because we need to start getting ready now. And we need to have informed positions that we share with legislators and others about things that are important to us and priorities. And so I very much support the additions, whether we leave the other items on there or not, fine. That's not as much an issue, but I do think the additions speak directly to things that the board has previously expressed desire to go in the direction of. And so it's, I think, very timely. The subjects are extremely timely. I'm very much in support of this, and I'm excited to see if they do, in fact, take our recommendations or our suggestions. I'm excited to see that research.
Thank you, Member Hart. Member Bogus and Member Green, was that just the light still off time? I'll just remember we're speaking to the motion to strike the last two, not yet to the proposal to add the other four. Any discussion?
Yeah, I would support Member Earl's motion to strike the last two. And then, I don't know, maybe this is not germane. I struggle with the broadness of this, having done some research, and not necessarily, I'm not talking about Member Earl's broadness, but the UDRC, when you do research, you develop a research question. And it's very clear, very concise. What are you researching? When I look at this, I go, what are you researching? And a lot of the data that we get is not gathered in a manner that's going to be unbiased to research these things. And so it's just this really wicked web for me. And I would love it if UDRC would say, we would like to engage in a research project about this research question. And maybe I'm getting in the weeds, but I would support Member Earl's motion to strike. And then those are just some things I wonder about.
So I don't see any other lights. Maybe I'll just ask a concluding question, because I also appreciate the value of studying topics, even those that, have a broad variety of opinion, and we debate the direction of certain topics, but data can inform those discussions in a way that gets concrete. So I'm not sure I'm in favor of striking. I'm certainly in favor of adding. I guess the question is, once we make these recommendations, do they come back to us? I am familiar with UDRC, but not in this precise type of framing. So if we did say, yeah, we'd like you to look at X, Y, and Z, would we expect them to say in what forum or in what approach, what kind of context would you like us to evaluate or analyze this?
Absolutely. So when you say us,
The board,
okay,
meaning staff. I assume we're not going to come back and vote on every research project, but if we give them priorities.
Correct.
Would we expect them to come back and say, here's our thoughts about how we might approach this and ask you for input?
Thank you for the question. So again, what happens is the priorities come in with the other agencies. And then the UDRC board meet and they discuss all of the priorities and they try to align as best they can. And so when you say priorities, it is a process. The priorities come in from the different agencies. Then the board reviews those and then they vote upon that themselves in consultation with their what are you guys called? Executive committee. Their governance has changed slightly. So basically, it goes back to this executive committee that Deputy Superintendent Jones sits on. Once the priorities are in place for the year, and then it then goes down into those levels of, and here are the research questions then that we can start being evolved, defined, discussed. Typically, at that point, what you see is UDRC then connects with, for example, with myself, my team, they start connecting with higher ed, connecting with workforce services, whoever it is, saying, here are the questions, start evaluating it, and then there's that back and forth information. Typically, we don't bring it back to the board until the research has gone through that process of, okay, the findings, review of the findings, the accuracies, looking at the variables. And then once it's completed, then what happens is those research answers or those briefings get put on the UDRC's website in a very comprehensive format with dynamic charts, plus the whole paper's cited in there. We bring those back as opportunities to say, and this is what's happened, this are the things that we found. So that's kind of the process behind all that.
So there is a little bit of opportunity for us to address specific research questions that come out of the priorities. Not
Absolutely.
necessarily a board vote, but some back and forth. Okay, Member Straight?
Yes, I'd just like to point out these are research items, not research questions. There's a difference. Items are much more broad. As they narrow down, that becomes a research question. And none of these 6 bullet points are that. I guess what I have not heard or been convinced of is the why. And the why is, why those last two? And so, and then, I could make a lot of assumptions about what those last two are, or the why, but that wouldn't be fair on my part. So I am absolutely not in favor of taking off these last two.
Okay, I think we are ready for a vote. Might just be able to do this by roll call and show of hands. So the motion is that the board strikes the last two research priorities from the DRC's research agenda priorities. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. Let's do a show of hands. All in favor? Oops, sorry. The question is to strike the last two, which are mental and social well-being through academic learning program and impact of personalized competency-based learning. All in favor, could you raise your hands? Striking. Yes, the motion is to strike. All right, we got that. So that motion fails. We come back to the 4 new ones, one at a time. Those 4. So
No, it's
I thought it was divided. I could be wrong.
into 2 questions.
Am I miss-
It wasn't divided.
Am I missing the motion? Who brought the motion?
Did you divide
Member
it
Davis,
all
was it not
separate
for-
ones? Oh, I thought it was divided.
That's what I thought.
into
Okay.
2.
So we have 4 separate. That's my 2. Like I said,
Well, that's a lot of
twice a
votes.
day like a stop clock. All right. So motion number 2, the board add a request for the UDRC to add professional learning practices that lead to academic excellence to the UDRC's research agenda priorities. And that was previously seconded. Member Wood.
I just know that tomorrow in Law and Licensing, we'll be talking about another research project between Brigham Young University and Wasatch that is directly related to professional learning practices. So I don't know that we need to duplicate efforts.
Okay, thank you, Member Wood. Member Lear, sorry.
And I just have a question, that if there's, and this may be to Aaron, Mr. Bruff, if there's any prioritization within the priorities for URDC. Oh, and I know these are suggestions, but this is just throwing out one more idea for URDC to look at. Is that, or maybe so it's, maybe the maker of the motion.
What?
Are you just throwing out one more idea for URDC to look at?
Yeah.
Or asking the board to add one more idea or concept?
I'm sorry, I obviously made a motion for
I'm
the board to
just
approve
wondering
these,
if
so I'm
these are
not.
in any priority order?
No,
That they
no.
come, or if you're just suggesting we add one more?
I'm recommending we add
One
some
more for URDC to look at?
Yes.
Okay. Pardon me? 4 more. Well, yes, 4
Yes.
more, essentially.
Additional
Okay, thank you. I
ones.
just want that clarification of, there's not a 1 through 6
No.
or 1 through 9, right, Aaron? Right, Maker? Okay,
Oh,
thank you.
Okay, any further discussion to motion number 1? Back to Vice Chair Earl.
yeah, I don't see, I just see this as a broader, right, broader item. As has already been stated, it's not a specific question. professional learning practices, those that are actually driving academic excellence, those things that are happening and those that, and I guess it also speaks to maybe those that aren't, but it, more than anything, it's looking for those drivers that, how those professional learning environments are actually creating high academic success. So I think it's broader than what we're looking at tomorrow, and I think that this is an area that we should be within.
Back to Member Straight.
Okay, if that's the case, I would say that, I'm not sure of the language, but let's focus on something we do know and would like more information, and that is what makes for successful professional learning communities. And you know what, I just put that in the question, so that's not an item. So I think whatever we do here needs to be a research item, not a research question, and now I'm stuck. But I think that professional learning communities would, in some way or another, be what you'd want to research there.
Is that a motion?
I don't know how, I guess I could add an amendment, I'm not sure of the wording. Characteristics.
I think somebody may be looking to respond to that. Was Superintendent Dixon, were you, or, sorry, I thought you were.
I think somebody's trying to get me to say something more than anything. No, this goes back to, I think, what Board Member Bogus was trying to address early on, and that is what is a research question? My experience with UDRC, when they get in the committees, they have those wonderful, rich conversations about, given the topic, what is it that we're trying to answer? In the case of professional learning communities, we already have all of that research. We know what quality professional learning communities look like, but it might drill down to how are effective professional learning communities in Utah impacting student outcomes or teacher retention? You know, you would want to, like, what is the outcome this board needs to know that then impacts policy, student outcomes, et cetera? So that's, again, I've been on the edges of UDRC, but those are the kinds of rich conversations that are those collaborative conversations to get down to the question. So as I've been listening to this, I think you're trying to stay more on topic. That then comes to UDRC to drill down to the question, if I'm
Correct.
if I'm capturing that accurately, Aaron. Thank you.
All right, anything further? We have lights from Member Davis, Vice Chair Hart, and Member Booth.
I would speak for the one up there that's written as divided motion number 3. I think we've talked a lot about the need to better understand effective internal controls in our agencies.
Point of order, we have to do one at a time. That's the motion that was made. So we're talking about 1, and then we'd move to 2, then 3, then 4.
I speak against the rest. I don't need to speak the rest of the time. The rest we've already have in motion with other monies.
All right. Let's see, Vice Chair Hart, Member Booth.
Yeah, I like all of them, and I think that at the end of the day, it's the professionals at UDRC that speaking to what Member Bogus was talking about, and actually Member Lear, they are professionals, they know how to do research, they know how to create a question out of a topic that's pertinent, that probably they will need their other stakeholders' input. Maybe there's something that some other agency wants and they can combine those, and it's a really powerful research question. This isn't our organization, so I think we need to stay very high level. I also want to speak in favor of the one we're on, number 2, because we started out the meeting today pretty much in sync, fantastically. It made my heart happy that there was a very pro-teacher, a very we need to make things better for teachers, and we need to understand what they need, and we need to provide more of that and less of things they don't need, and we need things to be to work for them. And I think this speaks directly to that. We don't need to tell teachers what kind of professional development works best for them. We need to hear we need someone very skilled researchers to collect the data, bring it all together and present it to us in a way that we can understand and then make decisions based on it. So I'm very supportive, quite frankly, so I don't have to push this button again. I'm supportive of all of them, but in particular, I am very supportive of number 2 as a very general question, then allowing UDRC to do their magic in that topic area if hopefully they pick it.
Okay, Member Booth.
Very quickly, I just know that we have a lot to accomplish between now and hard stop at 5 o'clock. And so these are great ideas. I agree we should provide them as opportunities for the committee to look at as they're considering what they're going to put their resources and their time into. And I think we should vote for these 4 things one at a time if they've got to be divided as quickly as we can and move on, because they're going to decide ultimately, and they could choose any one of these 4 or none of them, and any one of the 4 would be great information for us, and we may not have it just exactly wordsmithed to the right degree, but we probably have got enough of an idea that they're smart enough to see, oh, this is something we're interested in, this is something we would like to make a priority, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Booth, and I'll echo that. I think each of these is thoughtful and well-formulated and worthy of throwing in the hopper and see what they do with it. Let's vote on number 2 then, seeing no further
Number
lights. Oh, sorry.
You got to vote on number 1.
One was to strike the other 2, so second motion.
Oh, sorry, my
but
apologies.
First of the new additions. Did you have final? Okay.
Nope.
So,
Let's vote.
motion number 2, the board had a request for the UDRC to add professional learning practices that lead to academic excellence to the UDRC's research agenda priorities. All in favor, let's do a show of hands. So, we've got the division there? No. Lear, Straight, Real, Norton, and Davis are all no's. 5 no's. Okay. On to number 3. Motion number 3 is that the board add a request for the UDRC to add risk management, planning, and efficacy of operations impacted by effective internal controls within public schools to the UDRC's research agenda priorities. And keeping in mind that we've already addressed a lot of the things in the other 3 motions and that law and licensing has 8 action items, is there any further discussion to that motion? Member?
No, I have my light on for something else. No, I
Okay.
do not
Member
want to
Straight.
discuss this motion.
I apologize,
Straight
but
then,
I would like to make an amendment. So I would like that we not request this from UDRC, but we forward this to the audit committee, internal audit.
Okay, is that an amendment or a substitute? I don't. Is that a substitute motion? That'd be a substitute motion. Are we what? Is that already being done? Should we, well, is there a second to that substitute motion, first of all? Do we have a second? I'm not hearing a second. Okay, we do have a second. Discussion to the substitute motion, which is to refer this question to audit rather than UDRC. Do we have anybody from audit that would like to address that motion?
That's the second one.
Substitute motion is that on motion number 3, on risk management, et cetera, that would be referred to audit rather than to UDRC. The nature of a substitute motion. There's some question of whether that's already being done.
So, okay, as audit chair, I'm going to ask a clarifying question. Are you intending to send it to audit for audit to consider sending it to UDRC, whatever they are, in order to save time? Or are you saying instead of sending it to UDRC, send it to audit to consider it for audit to do the work?
The second one.
The second one?
Yes.
We got a second. Member Norton seconded. So any further discussion to
Yeah,
Member Hart?
An audit is different than research. Certainly, that is a function that the audit team can undertake. One of my questions or concerns would be UDRC. Their scope seems to be larger than the audit department. Like, it's more organizations. And so you might get a different type of scope and therefore different results, especially considering internal controls in different agencies that might be informative rather than just staying within our USBE. Would that was a question?
Correct.
Okay.
Being larger, they would look at multiple agencies.
Okay. Any further? Yes, Member Bogus. All right. Member Earl, did you have discussion of that substitute motion? Okay. Okay, the substitute motion then is to refer the research question, motion number 3, to the audit committee for consideration for future audit staff action. And I think we could clarify rather than sending it to UDRC, or is this an addition? I think because it's a substitute, it would be replace the initial motion, correct? But you tell me, okay. Rather than, okay, so let's just see if we can do it by show of hands. And is that okay? Do you need a roll call, or are we okay to go show of hands? Okay. All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. Four in favor? Okay. So that motion fails. We're back to the underlying motion that the board add a request for the UDRC to add risk management, planning, and efficacy of operations impacted by effective internal controls within public schools to the UDRC's research agenda priorities. Seeing no lights, all in favor, please raise your hand. No? Opposed? Okay. That motion passes, and we're on to motion number 4, which is that the board add a request for the UDRC to add. Scroll down just a little bit. Promising education, flexibility, and choice options leading to educator and parent satisfaction. Can we scroll up a little bit on the big screen there?
And then Bogus is
Or, there we go.
Christina's.
Okay, Member Bogus.
Oh, I do not want to speak to this motion. I would like to be
Okay.
in the hopper, as you say.
Okay, in the hopper. And do we have, no, we don't have Member Booth. Okay, all right. Motion's been read. All in favor, please raise your hand. Count on that one? Okay. That motion fails. And we're up to the last one. Number 5, that the board add a request for the UDRC to add safety prevention through security measures, school discipline, and threat assessment to the UDRC's research agenda priorities. Any discussion to that motion? Back to Member Bogus? No? Member Straight? Or, hold on, let me look at my lights here. We got Bogus, Wood, and Straight, and Lear. Is that all to this motion, or are you holding?
I'm holding for the
Still
hopper.
holding? Okay, Wood, Member Wood.
Just a quick question. Would any of this be done with Representative Wilcox's new bill, HB 61, where we have a new safety czar and all of that?
Deputy Norman.
Patty Norman, Deputy Superintendent of Student Achievement. Thank you for that question. As I'm looking at it, the safety prevention through security measures, I think that it could be done, but they haven't hired that person yet for the whole scope of what is being asked. I think the part through school discipline, that would not be a part of his bill through 61, and the threat assessment would be a part of his bill currently. So I think 2 out of those 3 would be a part of the bill. They're not there yet. The threat assessment is also a part of it is 61 because schools have to complete the threat assessment in order to be involved in the grants that will be coming out, so yes.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we got Member Lear.
I'm just wondering why we would ever want to study safety prevention.
Talking about the syntax of preventing safety from happening.
That seems a little.
Fair enough.
I had the same problem and a
Let's-
couple of others, but this time I said it. So
Let's
why
look at
would-
let's look at the syntax maybe.
Add safety prevention, safety improvement?
Safety and,
Safety and prevention? Safety and prevention of what? Safety and prevention of guns, safety and prevention of shooting, safety and what is the safety and prevention?
go back to the
of?
maker, remember Earl?
Yeah, we
Oh,
could, I mean, if
that's
you
a
want to.
cosmic study.
Yeah, if we want to fix that a little bit, with the idea being looking at those prevention strategies.
Oh, strategies.
Yeah, that
And
are
I guess when
effective for school discipline, that promote safety, right, and those measures. That's kind of the research thing there. If that
helps
needs to
me
be worded a little differently.
Helps me
Any
understand. Thank you.
suggestion for a friendly, or do we have we've got it? Okay, safety.
Yeah, I think that, yeah.
I'm not.
Through prevention and security measures?
Yeah, maybe prevention and security measures, that works. Prevention and security measures.
Or, or security.
Okay, that looks good. Who's doing that?
Okay,
Angie.
Chair, may I move to amend? Divided motion number 5?
that's in order.
I would move that we amend it to say physical school safety through prevention, security measures, school discipline, and threat assessment.
Is that a friendly?
Yeah, friendly.
Without objection, let's see what that looks like. School safety through prevention, security measures. Any objection to taking that as a friendly? Okay, so that stands amended. Member Davis.
Yeah, I totally support this conceptually, and I believe we discussed this in audit a few months ago, and we're going to be discussing it today. So again, I think we're already covered in this area, and it's an important one for sure.
Okay, Member Bogus, are you back on this one, or are you still holding?
I'm
Just
holding
wanna
in the
make sure
hopper,
I
sir.
overlook. All right, in the hopper, okay. So the motion is framed up. I don't think we have anybody else. All right.
Sorry, excuse
Motion
me.
is that the board add a request for the UDRC to add physical school safety through prevention, security measures, school discipline, and threat assessment to the UDRC's research agenda priorities. Let's see if we can do it by show of hands. All in favor?
Okay. In favor is Member Hymus, Member Green, Member Bogus, Member Booth, Member Carey, Vice Chair Earl, and Chair Moss.
Okay. I believe that fails then. Yep. Okay. Let's see. I think
Christina's in the hopper.
you are. I'm just making sure we're in the right. No, we're going there. I'm just.
I'm smiling cheesy like, Chair.
We got you. I'm just trying to make sure I connect it to the right.
12-6.
What number? We were on 12. No, 12.5. All right, so we're wrapping up 12.5. This still is to 12.5 though, correct?
It is, sir.
Okay.
I would just move that the board add a request to the UDRC that asks them to study the effect of arts for art's sake on academic growth, and I would speak to the motion.
Is there a second? Seconded. Back to you, Member Bogus.
Awesome. So I just think if this is what we're throwing out for them to consider, oftentimes the arts are neglected and people say, we've got to integrate, we've got to use the art to teach math, we've got to use the art to teach this, but there is research out there that says art for art's sake actually is the one thing that increases academic excellence and high test scores when it's taught for the sake of the art form. And like, for example, the theory of music is taught just to learn the theory of music. Math scores, coincidentally, increase. And I would just think, as long as we're just throwing stuff out there, I would like to see if they could do something with that. And it's just a thought, and if the board votes it down, I promise to only be offended for 17 seconds.
Okay, Member Green.
Yeah, I would absolutely support that. I actually just spoke with a third grader in a local elementary and just kind of in passing, and they were saying that, but we don't do art. And I was like, what? What do you mean you don't do art? And it's just they don't have time. This little girl's 8. And so, you know, I think it holds some relevance and it kind of ties everything back together. What are we burdening our LEAs with? Could we find a way to bring those, find that balance and give back our children elements of them that are age appropriate? Things like artwork and study, make an argument with data about why that's so important. So, thank you.
Thank you, Member Green. Okay, Member Wood.
Can anyone tell me how this would be different than the consent calendar item that we reviewed today, what it's called the Arts Education Data Project?
Anybody want to address that one? Great question. Let's see who we have.
We reviewed that. It's a contract review that we did today in the consent calendar.
You didn't vote on the consent calendar.
Just read the agenda.
I'm not seeing any staff volunteering to answer that. Does anybody else have an answer to that very good question? We are stumped. So we'll take that as a rhetorical. I apologize, Member Wood. Important issue to be raised. It doesn't appear we have an answer, but the issue is out there. Thank you. We'll see if we can figure that out. All right, so the motion is before the board, though, that the board add a request for the UDRC to add the effect of art for art's sake on academic growth to the UDRC's research agenda priorities. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Okay.
Have hands up high if you're in favor.
Voting yes is Member Green. Just straight. Oh, no. Are we good? Well, real.
Unanimous. Sarah,
All
you're
right,
not voting.
are we unanimous?
Oh,
Was anybody
Unanimous.
opposed? Was anybody opposed?
Matt.
Matt hates the art.
Oh, goodness. All right. Member Hart. Do we get to
Okay.
vote there? Okay.
Okay, final vote now.
No. Okay, you want to take it back for the last one?
We got to vote on the full thing amended.
No, I
No?
think it was
No,
separated.
okay,
So,
okay.
yeah, because it was
Yep.
divided, we
I'll
did
take
them
it back
each
over.
separately, and we're good.
That's the end of finance, is that correct?
Nope, well, social
So-
studies, 12.6.
No.
No?
Yep. Law and licensing,
Can we take a break? Can I, point of personal privilege, could we take a
yes, let's take a 5-minute saunter.
saunter? Yes.
Okay.